Welcome to The Painful Truth, your source for what's real and what hurts. Today we'll be talking about social justice warriors, or as I like to call them, the new Jacobins. Many are familiar with the scourge that is the social justice warrior. They're in your hobby, tone policing your dude bros. But who are these people and where did they come from? Let's start by taking a look at your average SJW. He, she, ye, it lives somewhere along the left coast, usually clustered around Seattle, Portland, or the Bay Area. They are identified by their brightly colored plumage, ironic facial hair, and obnoxious fashion sense. The social justice warrior is also known for its unique mating calls, such as the loud
patriarchy
and the haunting
Die, cis, scum.
For those of you wondering what they want, the answer is everything. Hence why the privilege checklist is so long. And they will stop at nothing in order to get it. Since there is nothing new under the sun, we turn to history. Herstory. To see if we can find a similar group of like-minded lunatics to help explain this aberrant behavior. And where better to look than the French Revolution? Now, most historians attribute the downfall of the Ancien Regime, which for those of you who don't speak dead languages means old school, on France's overseas military adventurism. Sorry, wrong slide. There we go. And their superlative McMansions, that not only look like they cost a fortune, but in fact cost many, many fortunes. So many fortunes that by the time the young and inexperienced Louis XVI was crowned king, I'm sorry, I have no idea how these slides keep getting messed up. That's better. France was flat broke. To make matters worse, Grandpa Louis managed to lose half of North America to the fucking British. Merde! Now, kingdoms running out of money was nothing new. Typically what would happen is the king's second cousin would invade, kill all the nobles, and replace them with nobles of his own. Faces would change, but the Ancien Regime remained intact. Hell, they even kept the same name so as not to confuse the peasantry. They even spared the defeated king's life, what with being cousins and all. So how did Louis XVI lose his head? What happened to turn an ordinary bankrupt kingdom into 5 republics and counting? Enlightenment happened. It all started innocently enough. Some uppity priest had the gall to suggest some guy in a funny hat who started a bunch of stupid wars might not actually speak for God. And maybe, just maybe, Jesus is okay with mass being said in a language other than the one used by the people who nailed him to a tree. Of course, I think we all know the real reason for the 95 Theses is this hottie right here. My man Luther didn't just rob the cradle, he robbed a nunnery. But I digress. What began as the simple notion that we didn't need some puffed-up Italian aristocrat to pass messages along to God, and therefore could speak to the Almighty ourselves, was misinterpreted by a few people who got it in their heads that this meant they could tell the Lord how to run his business. Thus, a new heresy was born. Such people, having due reverence for their creator, didn't trouble him with petty requests for sunny days or a really good ham sandwich, but instead sought to immanentize the eschaton. Now technically that is proper English, but let me translate for those of you who aren't well read in Judeo-Christian theology. Immanentize means to make imminent, not to be confused with imminent, as in about to happen. Immanence refers to the spiritual realm which permeates reality. The soul realm, if you will, or the intellectual realm for all you filthy atheists out there. Eschaton is a word from another dead language which means the end.
Game over, man.
So for a Christian, to immanentize the eschaton means to bring about the apocalypse. For those of you who are confused as to why anyone would want to bring about the apocalypse, realize that for a Christian in good standing, the apocalypse is when they get their reward for all the forgiveness and such. Basically, they're the kids who want to open their Christmas presents early. What makes this belief heretical is not only the arrogant presumption inherent in telling God what to do, but also the silly things done in the effort to nudge him down from heaven, like dropping white phosphorus on Palestinian children in order to drive the Muslims out of Jerusalem, so they can demolish the Dome of the Rock and rebuild the temple on its original foundation, as was prophesied in the Revelation to St. John of Patmos as a necessary precondition to the second coming of Christ. Because, as we all know, Jesus hates the little children. Now, before you secular humanists go patting yourselves on the back, recall that the apocalypse is a eschaton, not the eschaton. Old John isn't the only one with a happily ever after story to sell. On a totally unrelated note, check out 1/1/2029, the new sci-fi thriller that takes place sometime before January 1st of the year of our Lord 2029, written by the guy you're listening to right now. By now you're probably asking yourself, what the hell does singularity have to do with annoying hipster trash? For that we turn to the patron saint of politicians, Sir Thomas More, who was humble enough not to make demands of his creator. He was, however, arrogant enough to think he could take up the almighty slack. Because the reason we're still waiting on the kingdom of heaven is because God is busy doing other things. Enter utopia, another word from a dead language that literally translates as not a place. The proper way to pronounce this word is orutopie, but that's just too many syllables for us lazy anglophones, so it got shortened to utopia, which is confusing due to that pronunciation meaning a good place in said dead language. To put that in context, it would be like changing the word oriforie, which means numb, to euphoria, and then wondering why your doctor is having difficulty diagnosing you. If you ever wondered why the grammar Nazi in your life will not shut up about these seemingly trivial errors, it's because they know how that one special snowflake can start an avalanche of bad ideas. Enter the Enlightenment. Having laid the intellectual foundations that the church was not gatekeeper to heaven and our own right hand could give us victory, all that remained was how we immanentize that eschaton. Now every asshole had his opinion on the matter, from John Locke's theory that we simply need to delude ourselves into heaven, to Jean Rousseau's proto-hippie return to Eden nonsense. What all these Johns had in common was a shared disdain for the whore they called the social contract. To them, the solution was a simple matter of tossing out the old contract and writing up a new one with this newfangled reason. Fuck the haters! So a bunch of uppity colonists told King George to go twist and went on to create Rome 2.0, while the hippie French, not to be outdone by a bunch of British rejects, killed their king and went on to create the Committee of Public Safety. Vive la Révolution! To be fair, the French political establishment tried to form a republican government that promoted the naive idealism of Rousseau. Problem was, Louis XVI's cousins weren't exactly thrilled with this whole revolution business. Not that they were so torn up about what happened to poor Louis. They were more concerned about their own subjects getting any silly ideas. Point being, Austria and Prussia, Germany wasn't a thing yet, decided to give the disciples of Rousseau a lesson in the law of the jungle and invade. Long story short, instead of bringing about a golden age of liberté, égalité, fraternité, life quickly turned to shit in revolutionary France. Had they listened to the godfather of science, the deliciously named Sir Francis Bacon, and his totally lame theories of empiricism, they might have concluded Rousseau's hippie bullshit was just that and gone back to the drawing board. Instead, they decided to double down and follow the social justice warriors of their day, the Jacobins. The parallels between the Jacobins and present-day social justice warriors are striking. As you're painfully aware, social justice warriors love their totemic fashion accessories. The Jacobins were no different, and their fashion sense was just as ridiculous. The Phrygian cap is one example. I'm sure you're all familiar with this painting. If you direct your gaze an inch or so higher, you'll note that Marianne is wearing a goofy-looking red hat. That's a Phrygian cap. Don't ask me. I'm not French. They even had hipsters, or as they were called back then, sans culottes, which translates to the lingua franca as without silky breeches. Which is why I like to refer to today's hipsters as sans goût, but I digress. The Jacobins came to the perfectly rational conclusion that the failure of the National Assembly was due to it being comprised of a bunch of wannabe Louis XVI's. Therefore, the only reasonable solution was to execute all of them with the help of Dr. Guillotine's fancy new invention. Oddly enough, mass executions failed to bring about utopia in revolutionary France. Who knew? Some might say the Committee of Public Safety needed to execute even more Frenchmen, and I would count myself among them, though I suspect utopian France would have a population of roughly 0 were that the case. After that, they tried killing God and worshipping the guy orchestrating the slaughter. and eventually disposed of the Gregorian calendar because... patriarchy? But what does cleansing continental Europe of the Gallic plague have to do with social justice? The answer lies in the similar pattern of escalating ideological failure. What started innocently enough as political correctness, that is, not referring to African Americans as women as or the Irish as dirty mix, and it's best you not mention the Jews at all. They own the media, you know. Somehow failed to bring about peace in our time. Not understanding the distinction between sticks, stones, words, and commercial airliners, social justice warriors concluded we needed to be even nicer to Islamic terrorists. When that failed to deter further attacks, they tried calling our own leaders terrorists in solidarity with their Middle Eastern counterparts. Alas, the kingdom of heaven no closer for all their whining, many SJWs resigned themselves to 4 years of rule under this dirty Mick when God finally answered their prayers and crashed the economy. Just in time to elect the not an old white guy. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! This was their storming of the Bastille. Tide finally turned. All the cardboard signs, papier-mâché puppets, and 3-word chants finally paid off. Change at last! Change at last! Barack Almighty, change at last! Gas prices were low, Gitmo was going to close, and double rainbows spread across the land.
What does this mean?
And then gas prices went right back up, Gitmo stayed open, and the double rainbow turned out to be God's promise to not flood the world again. Even the weather was blamed on tradition in the form of fossil fuels, which are said to be the source of every hurricane, tsunami, and pandemic. The resulting push for renewable energy has thus far managed to kill a lot of birds and tortoises, and ironically lead to the construction of a lot of coal power plants, while atmospheric CO2 continues its upward climb and the predicted warming trend fails to materialize. Maybe sunspots do have something to do with it. With the economy still in the shitter, SJW sought yet another way to immanentize the eschaton: gay marriage. Surely utopia is right around the corner now that even the pseudo-Catholics are on board. Gas prices have come down after all. The sacrifice of the traditional family was totally worth it. Besides, we can plug that demographic hole with unrestricted immigration from the third world. Nothing could possibly go wrong there. And even if that fails, we can always mutilate our genitals. Fundamentally, what the Jacobins and social justice warriors have in common is a stubborn refusal to consider the traditions they were so quick to throw away existed for a reason. That the Ancien regime did not become Ancien by accident, but by applying the lessons learned by countless previous generations who may not have been as clever as us, but at least knew what worked and, more importantly, what didn't. And that empire has a half-life of 150 years or so. What do you think the Rastafari are babbling about anyway?
Babylon mystery, mother of harlots, and all these abominations of the earth.
What's that? You wanted answers? You want to know how the Jacobins were eventually defeated? They were shot, beaten, and executed in accordance with their own laws and buried in mass graves. Their bones are now a Parisian tourist attraction. Their legacy paved the way for this guy to wage war on all of Europe. 7 coalitions later, Napoleon was finally defeated, for realsies this time, and more than 3 million people were dead. And that's the painful truth. Thank you for listening. I would very much appreciate if you would click the thumbs up icon. Next time, in the spirit of the fairness doctrine, I'll be taking the piss out of transhumanists. Click subscribe if that sounds like something you want to hear. Or click subscribe anyway. I'm not here to tell you what to do, I'm here to tell you what to think. If you want to help pay my mortgage, buy a copy of my ebook 1/1/2029, a work of speculative fiction in the tradition of Michael Crichton. It's about the internet. Have a wonderful day.